Welcome to Business Connection. I'm Liz Spencer. We're still on location at Napier Settlement. We're at the Martin Mitchell Mansion, and we're going to hear about this story and many more. So, Raina, Napier Settlement shares stories through its history. Tell me a little bit about the stories you want to tell and have told.
You know, if I could reduce it to one sentence, it would be to tell the American story. We have an important and a critical mission, and our mission is really to tell the story of we the people through the mirror of one burgeoning Midwestern community. We are the institutional memory of this community, and when we tell our story, we tell the story of this nation. If you think about it, you know, who are we the people? Did they all die after the Founding Fathers? And if they didn't, well, what became of them? And the truth is that every generation has a we the people. And our job is to collect, to protect, and to use those stories and artifacts to tell their story, and by doing so, tell the story of America. For example, we're here today in this beautiful home that was built by George Martin, and he was the son of a Scottish immigrant. What better American story than that? We also have the halfway house here on our property that was once owned by Urbane Stanley. Now, he was known to be an abolitionist, and we have oral history to support that that house was part of the Underground Railroad story. It was part of the stops. There isn't a better American story. And if you look a little bit more, even right here in this home, after George Martin's untimely death, two of his daughters took the business, and they continued to have a thriving business throughout their lifespan at a time when women were thought to be not intellectually capable of running a business. That's an American story as well. And so we hope that we can reflect what our story is and tie it to that larger American story, because truly what these stories are, they're roadmaps. They're roadmaps for the current and for future generations as they chart their course for who they want to become, and also to help provide the legacies that will also, in one way or another, help us see who we might want to become.
Well, it's by looking at the past and hearing the stories. I mean, I know for me that it's nice to hear they had struggles and challenges just like you and I do. Right. Especially as women leaders and sitting here in the Martin Mitchell Mansion.
One of the wonderful things about Naperville, maybe you didn't know, but women were voting in this small town 3 years before the 21st Amendment passed.
Pretty
cool.
What
a story. In terms of the future stories, oh my goodness, there are so many stories that we can tell, and important stories. We have the story of Judd Kendall. He's a Naperville hero whose sacrifice really changed the course of the first American victory at Cantigny. And he sacrificed his life. He was tortured because he would not give information about that battle. It cost him his life, but in essence, it changed the course of the war. Did you know the world's largest furniture manufacturer started right here? And he had 19 different factories, and he had thousands of employees, and he had them in more than just in the United States. Now, this was at a time when there was no phone, there was no internet, there were no major highways or roads. So imagine the logistics that it took to do all of this on paper, and yet he was successful. You know, these are the American stories. They were our stories right here, but they're those important American stories. And I'll tell you one more, which I think we can tie ourselves directly to the independence of this country. Because you see a man, a patriot by the name of John Dudley, who not only fought in the Revolutionary War, but crossed the Delaware with George Washington and fought in Trenton and Saratoga, is buried right here at the Naperville Cemetery. And so there are many more of those stories, and we have all of those people today. The great immigrant story in John Calamos, the great entrepreneur story in Michael Burke and Dave Kelch. These are all people that we all know. The great women's story in powerful and strong women leaders like Pam Davis. They continue on, and it's our job to tell their story because they have an important legacy for all of us as we move forward in what we want for our city.
I think oftentimes people don't realize their own story.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're so busy living the failures, the successes, the goods and the highs and the lows, that you forget that all of what you're doing is contributing to that larger story, and that you are defining who we are as a people.
Right, and I think sometimes it's with reflection that you figure out these stories, and your group, realizes the impact. Like, I doubt Peter Kraler really understood the impact he was making.
Absolutely. He was busy building his empire, but at the same time he employed thousands and generations of people. There are people with pins from Kraler that had 100 years worth of service because their grandparents worked for 30 years, their parents worked for 30 years, and they had worked there another 40 years, and aunts and uncles, etc. He gave them much more than just a job. He gave them a community. He was very philanthropic in looking to build institutions and places like the Y so that we could build community. And we see that today again and again in the people that have meant a lot to this city. I don't know how many people know the story of Carolyn Martin Mitchell, but Carolyn Martin Mitchell in her later years was looking to there were no descendants. All the two married, none had children. And looking around, she donated 212 acres, and on it sits Naper Settlement today, but not just Naper Settlement, because all she said in her will, it was a small phrase. She bequeaths this to the city of Naperville for the public good. That's all. And out of those few words came Edwards Hospital, Linden Oaks, Knox Park, so many other things that today we take for granted and that have really made this place so wonderful. And if you're familiar with our Naper Nights, one of the reasons that we have those is because we're trying to fulfill her wishes. That's our job. She wanted this to be for the public good. And how wonderful would it be for her to look, through her bedroom window and one day see 2,000 people of her community here enjoying a day with her family, enjoying some good music, some good food, and just forming community.
It's smart to have something like Naper Nights where people get to come here, see it, and have fun in one other way, and then history kind of sneaks in the back.
Well, we do that in many ways. As you know, we have an award-winning playscape, and the kids love to come and get wet. It's the only splash pad in Naperville. But one of the things that it does is it tells the story of our city. The trading post that you see there is part of our legacy. Joseph Naper came here and would trade with the Indians. The wagon that you see has a lot to do with how Joseph Naper and many of the other settlers came and settled this area. And so we develop programs for these small children to teach them history in fun ways. And remember, history has the word story in it for a reason. History is alive, it's living, it lives every single day, and it is your story. It's our story collectively. And so I hope that people don't look at museums as, oh, we're going to come and see the old stuff or the dead stuff. Those are called mausoleums. We're a museum because life happens here.
It's a perfect time to stop and say, we'll be right back with more Business Connections. Stay tuned.